It's that time again, time for another Sunday hour-long podcast episode. It says here it feels like 6 degrees. I don't know why they've put that. 10 degrees centigrade, double that to 20 and add 30 is 50 degrees, of course. So 50 Fahrenheit isn't too bad. 100% humidity, which isn't surprising because of the rain we've had. 994 millibars. Now that is low. Storm, hang on, let me check my notes here. There are different ways to pronounce this. Some people say Storm Airwin, others are saying Aowin, and others are saying something else. I don't know what to say. I quite like Airwin, actually. So Storm Airwin, by the way, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. The wind is from the west. Oh, the flag's dried now. It was wet wrapped round the pole. Wind is from the west. And it was very, very windy in the night. Lashing rain, absolutely lashing rain. Howling wind, but now there's a bit of, there is wind from the west. It's more like a breeze. It's stopped raining. It's brightened up. It's all gone up north. For those of you outside the country, you're probably hearing on your news about it, because you know us Brits and our weather, that's all we talk about. Northern Ireland was at the highest wind speed ever recorded, 114 miles an hour. That's the highest ever recorded, apparently. Nothing compared with hurricanes, of course, down in the Gulf of Mexico. Or is it the Gulf of America now? I don't know. Someone said the North Sea, we should call it the Gulf of Great Britain. I don't know why we have to change things. So we are calm here now. It's all gone up north. Northern Ireland, Northern England, Scotland. Just been watching the telly. It's dreadful up there. Power lines down, trees down. It's just, I don't know, it's just awful. And I've now had a Met Office email. Yellow warning for London and South East England, ice between 3 in the morning on Saturday, and 10 in the morning on Saturday. Icy stretches will lead to hazardous conditions in places on Saturday morning. So we're 10 degrees today, Friday today. Tomorrow it's going to be icy. Let's move away from the weather, shall we? So many of you have messaged me and emailed me about the podcast I did, the outside broadcast as I call them. They're not actually outside broadcasts, they're outside recordings at Pulborough Brooks. So many of you love that. You love me wandering around the woods or wherever I may be, rabbiting and talking rubbish into the portable recorder that I've got. Now when the summer gets here, eventually, which it will of course, I will be taking the recorder with me. So thank you for all your emails. Rants@protonmail.com. Lovely to hear from you. And it's really encouraging. I didn't think it was that interesting, actually, wandering around saying, oh, look, there's the birds singing. Oh, I can see a pond. Oh, it looks stagnant. I didn't think that was of interest. Apparently it is, so I live and learn. Now, what's this episode supposed to be about? Marriage vows, to love, honour and obey. Evelyn, nice to hear from you. I'm not obeying anyone, she says. OK, Evelyn, that's fine. She says that when she got married, she did say that because it was many years ago. It was just the done thing. It was the marriage vows in church. She said, but I've never obeyed my husband and I've no intention of doing so. It's strange, isn't it, though, because I've talked before, haven't I, about a couple get married. The husband owns the house. He owns the furniture. If the wife doesn't like it, she can leave with nothing. All so unfair. And then on top of all that, to have to obey your husband as well, it does seem rather odd. Of course, things have changed now, but Evelyn says she's been happily married for 55 years, never obeyed her husband. She doesn't do what he says, he doesn't do what she says, and they're happily married. So well done, Evelyn. I knew a lady years ago. She had her own house and she wanted a partner. She wanted to go out with someone, meet someone and eventually get married. Her worry was her house, she had a mortgage on it. She'd worked hard. She'd been paying the mortgage. Her worry was that someone moves in, some chap she meets, they fall in love, blah, blah, blah. He moves in, they get married. If it goes wrong, she could lose half her house. I don't know what the law is on that these days, but I have heard that even if you move in and you're not married, you become, in this case, it would be her common law husband. And he does have some rights and some claim on the property, even though it was hers. So she was very, very loath to have anyone move in. She did get married in the end, and fortunately they've been happy for many years. But it is a worry, isn't it? You've got your own place, you've worked hard, you've saved up, you've got your mortgage. You meet someone, a partner, they move in and they can claim some of your property. So that's not good. John, nice to hear from you. John says that it's not a good way to start a marriage, is it? You're in church and you vow to love, that's fair enough. Honour, well, I suppose that's fair enough, but obey. He says that's not a good start for a marriage. One of them is the boss. Before the marriage ceremony is even over, the husband is the boss. You do as he says. It's not a good start, you're right, John. And the husband has certain rights, doesn't he? We won't go into that in the bedroom. It's his right, blah, blah, blah. I don't like any of it. I think it's all nonsense. I think people get married because they fall in love and want to spend their lives together. They shouldn't have any of this, one of them's in charge and the other one's just a subservient slave. I don't think that's good at all. Oh, before I forget, I put a little video on the website, rants.info. Just a very quick, I think it's about a minute long, just a quick video. It's only on my phone of Pulborough Brooks. I'm showing you a lake, well, pond, actually not a lake, it's a pond, and it looks stagnant, but it's not. That's of great interest, I'm sure, to all of you. A 1 minute video of me saying, look, there's a pond. It looks stagnant, but it's not. Go and have a look. rants.info. Oh, on that video also, you can see the boss walking towards me. That's Tricia, of course. Now, all this business about marriage vows, if you remember, I mentioned it Wednesday. It was Wendy who emailed me with that song in mind, Don't Tell Me What to Do, Don't Tell Me What to Say. Do you remember? I can screw that note up now. That's that dealt with. Good point, Wendy. Yes, it has stirred up a lot of interest. I've got a lot of emails here. I can't read them all out, of course. Phil says the whole thing is extremely unfair. Nice to hear from you, Phil. And he said they had theirs changed. You don't have to say that these days, apparently. I was going to look into this and I didn't get round to it in the end. I've been so busy with things. But you don't have to say that these days. You can change things. Of course, you don't have to get married in a church or a registry office. That's all it was, wasn't it? Church or registry office going back many years. Now you can get married in a local hotel, a local pub, probably in a shed on the village green. Or, as people do, they go off to Cancun, don't they? Where's that? Mexico, isn't it? It's a long way to go to get married. I don't think I want to do that. I think the furthest I'd go, if I was going abroad, would be the Isle of Wight. My brother-in-law the other day, haven't seen him for a while, and he said, of course, you don't need a passport to go to the Isle of Wight. And I said, no, you do. They've changed the rules. They've changed the law. And just for a split second, he looked at me and frowned. Then he realised I was being an idiot. Happy days. I knew a chap, this is going back many years. He had a flat. He was paying his mortgage on the flat. And he met a young lady and they got married. They didn't move into his flat. They bought a house between them. He kept his flat. She kept saying to him, sell the flat, you've got some equity in it, sell the flat, we can have an extension on the house, we can do this, buy a new car, do that. But he wouldn't. That was his, as he put it to me, he didn't tell her this, that was his insurance. One day, if anything went wrong, that was his flat. He rented it out so the mortgage was being paid. I don't know how he kept it separate because they did get divorced and she had no claim on the flat. It was just the house they owned that they sort of split up. Anyway, they got divorced. It was about it was more than that, years later. I can't remember. And he moved back into the flat. He waited until the people gave him notice they were moving out. Then he moved into his flat and carried on paying his mortgage. I don't know how he kept that separate from the sort of divorce proceedings. I'm not sure. But he did. Had he sold his flat and put the equity into their joint sort of venture, then he would have lost half of that. Well, I don't know, all of it, I expect. So you do have to be careful these days. As I said, you move in with someone, you become a common law wife or a common law husband. I'm not sure of the rules and regulations, but it does worry people. Got an email from Greta. Hello, Greta, that's a nice name. She says that she got married, she's divorced now, got married years ago. After about 15 years, it didn't work out in the end. They got divorced, didn't have children, they got divorced. Halfway through the marriage, she won £20,000. Now, this is going back about 40 years. £20,000 on some competition she did. She had the money paid into a bank account which she opened, which was just hers, not the joint account that they had. And she didn't tell her husband. And this account, whatever it was, did have a little bit of interest on it over the years. He knew nothing about it. That was her insurance. And of course, when she got divorced, they had to split everything up. But she kept that secret from him. Now that you might think, well, that's a bit odd, isn't it, to keep a secret from your husband? You're married. Why are you doing that? Was she unsure that the marriage was going to carry on? I don't know. But that is interesting, Greta. So you kept your 20 grand. Of course, you can sign this prenup thing. What is it? Prenuptial or something, where you get married, but you say, if we split up, you're not having this. You're not having that. That's mine. Get your hands off that. It's mine. I suppose that's sensible, but it doesn't give you a sense of trust, does it? You're thinking, well, if we split up, he or she has got all this in writing that I can't do this, I can't do that. I don't know. It all sounds rather odd to me. Because without trust, there's no marriage, is there? You can't base a marriage on mistrust, really. Barry, nice to hear from you. Barry says, I love, honour and obey my wife. He says, I know it should be the other way round with the obey bit, but he said, I obey her. He said, it's really good for a calm, peaceful and happy life. Do as you're told and you can't go wrong. And Barry has been married, where's my note? 60 years. Not bad, Barry. 60 years of marriage. Well done. That's the secret, is it? Do as you're told. I like that. Trisha's mantra, I think we'd call it, is listen to your wife. If I do something and she says, no, I don't think that's a good idea, and it goes wrong, out comes the mantra, listen to your wife. And the trouble is, 9 out of 10, well, 10 out of 10 times she's right, which is annoying. A lot of couples these days don't get married, do they? I know, well, several couples. They live together, bought a house together, bought a flat together. They share everything, but they just didn't get married, didn't want to get married and never will. I have noticed, though, that two couples I know didn't get married, just lived together in sin, as it used to be called, didn't it? Do you remember that? Living in sin. Dreadful. Once the children come along, though, I know of two couples that got married for the sake of the children, they said. So I'm not sure whether that's good or bad. I think the children would like to have married parents, or am I just being old-fashioned here again? Am I being a sort of 100-year-old grumpy, silly old man? I don't know. Just going back to Wendy's email again, she says that her mum left her dad when Wendy was 10. They left, it was a rented place they had. They moved out because the marriage wasn't working, and I don't know what happened, but they moved out and they moved into one room, just her and her mum, when Wendy was 10. She said it was awful, but her mum did her best, and you know, they were only there for 6 months. Something amazing happened. The divorce had all gone through, that was finished, all finalised. Something amazing happened. Her aunt had left Wendy's mum her house in her will. So Wendy and her mum had only been in this one-room place, rented, for 6 months, and suddenly they've got a house. So, of course, they moved into this lovely house. Wendy knew the house well because they often visited her aunt in the past, and it was lovely. She had her own bedroom, no mortgage, no rent to pay. But, of course, her dad found out about this and tried to claim half of the property. He failed, of course, because it was nothing to do with him. The divorce was finalised. This was left to Wendy's mum by her aunt. That was it. End of. Why do people say end of? I mustn't say that. I hate these little snippets of things that people pick up on. End of. So that turned out really well. And apparently, although Wendy stayed close to her dad over the years, she saw a lot of him, he was always very bitter, she says, always very bitter. I've heard stories like this before. A couple split up, then one of them wins the lottery or something, or a few £1,000s on a competition, and the other one tries to claim half of it. And of course it doesn't work if you're divorced and it's finished. I won't say end of. So I think that's quite good, especially where the one that wins the money was the one that was cheated on, the aggrieved, you know. That's rather a nice ending, isn't it, to a story. I'm hearing more and more these days where a couple of ladies move in together, they get married. Nothing wrong with that, or a couple of chaps, of course. But in the ladies' situation, one or both of them may have been married in the past to a chap, and they're fed up with it, the way things are. Perhaps it's honour and obeying and all this. And they get together and they leave their husbands and go live together, and they get married. And that does seem to be happening more and more. Is that really a sort of kick in the face to men? Well, you didn't treat me properly, so, you can go do your own thing. I'm going off with so-and-so, and we're going to live happily ever after. I don't know, I just thought I'd mention that. I am hearing more and more. In fact, people I talk to, they know of someone who's gone off, left the husband and gone off with another woman. I suppose there's equality there, isn't there? Two ladies together or two gents. They're equal. There's no man in charge of the lady or anything. I don't know how times have changed. It's funny, isn't it? Over the years, when I look back to the 1960s, I knew a gay couple, these two lads. They were very happy they lived together. This was 1967 when it became legal. It was 67, wasn't it? Yeah, it was 67. But they'd been living together for several years before it became legal. I suppose two chaps can live together as friends, can't they? As far as anyone's concerned, anyway, they're just friends. And then, of course, it became legal in 1967. And they were happy over many, many years. I lost touch with them over time, of course, as you do. Do you know, I've lost touch with most people. I don't know anyone from school. I know, how many people do I know from the radio and TV workshop? Only my brother-in-law. Oh, no, and one other. My brother-in-law, because he married my sister, of course, so I still know him. And a chap I talked to on the radio. I don't think there was anyone else that I worked with back then in the TV workshop, no. So that's only two people. And there were loads of people there, loads of staff. Of course, some of them have passed away. I haven't kept in touch with anyone. Unlike some people, you know, they still have their friends from school. Kind of 60, 70 years later, they still have friends that they met at school all those years ago. Out of the people I knew back then, late teens, early 20s, I was one of the last to get married. There's all my friends all around me. So-and-so's getting married. He's got married. They've got married. And I was ending up, not on the shelf, exactly, but on my own. If I wanted to go out in the evening, say to a nightclub, well, there's only me. Everyone else is married. They can't go out. They're not allowed out. No, I shouldn't say that, should I? One or two did. They went down the pub perhaps once a week and we met up there, which was nice. But of course they were all into marriage and mortgages and paying rent and having babies and stuff, changing nappies. And I was free. I was single. Where's all my friends gone? Where are they all? They're all at home married. Of course, eventually I got married and I was involved with mortgage, babies, nappies and all the rest of it. But it did seem odd at the time, though. I remember sitting in the pub on my own on more than one occasion, looking round and thinking, well, where is everyone? What happened to the old days? Oh, it's the Likely Lads, isn't it? Do you remember the Likely Lads on the telly? Oh, what happened to you? Whatever happened to me? What was it? What became of the people we used to be? Because it was Bob and Terry, wasn't it? Terry got married to Thelma and Bob, well, he'd gone off in the army and when he came back, everyone's married. No, it was the other way round, wasn't it? Terry went into the army, that's it, and Bob got married. I'm confused. And of course he was always saying to Bob, come on, let's go down the pub, let's go out and, well, no, not, I shouldn't say pull some birds. I wasn't about to say that. I wasn't about to say that at all. Let's go down the pub and meet some young ladies. Of course, Bob was married to Thelma. Thelma didn't like Terry because he was always trying to lead Bob astray. But that's the sort of situation, not that bad, of course, but that was the situation I was in. I was on my own, free and single, surrounded by all my married friends. I ended up sitting in the pub on my own, which of course wasn't much fun. I'd never, in my teens, I hadn't thought of getting married. I mean, you don't. Well, some people did. A friend of mine and his girlfriend, they were both 16. They got married at 16. They're still married now. I think they live in Spain. They're still married now. So that worked. But 16 to get married, I remember thinking, stone the crows. Well, I didn't think stone the crows back then. What would I have thought back then? I can't say that, I don't suppose. I would have thought, crikey. No, I wouldn't. But I was amazed. 16? We're not even legally allowed to go in a pub and have a beer. Not until you're 18. To get married at 16, that all seems odd, doesn't it? At 16, you can get married, you can have babies, but you can't go into the pub and have a beer. You can't vote, but you can when you're 18, I think you can vote. But that is strange, isn't it? You're not allowed into a pub to have a drink. Well, you're allowed into a pub with an adult. That's funny, isn't it? Saying to your mum or dad, Mum, Dad, we're a married couple, can you take us down the pub so we can have a Coke? And you're a married couple with a baby. It's all a bit back to front, that. Of course, in America, what's the drinking age out there? Is it 21? I remember we went to California. We went into a bar and this chap said, he said to me, I can serve you, but not the young lady. And we were both over 21. Next time we went in there, we took passports just to prove that we were of age. Of course, when I was 16, I did go into pubs and I did have beer, and I didn't take one of my parents with me. I didn't have a responsible adult with me. I might have had some adults, well, people over 18, with me, but they weren't responsible at all. We used to go over to Brighton. One of them would say, let's all go to Brighton. I didn't like that. I didn't want to do that, but I did sometimes. Let's all go over to Brighton, the top ranked suite, it was called over there. And we go over there in someone's car and have a dreadful night out. Well, a good night out, but I don't know, we behaved dreadfully. I really didn't want to get married in my teens. I was having too much fun. It was good. They were good days, really good days, too much fun, everything going on. Then, of course, you get into your 20s. As I said, I found myself on my own. Oh, everyone's gone off and got married. It was a bit depressing, actually, thinking back. I remember my brother-in-law, they got married, him and my sister, and they'd gone off on honeymoon. So they said, and I was going to go round to their flat to see if he was back. And my mum said, don't go round there, they're away on honeymoon. And I thought, hang on a minute, why is she saying don't go round there? Anyway, they weren't away at all. If you're listening, Paul, if you're listening, you'll remember this. I drove round the back of the block of flats in my MG Magnet, aerials all over it and illegal radio equipment, and I'm banging on the window. You coming down the pub? My sister was not a happy bunny. I think what it was, they couldn't afford a honeymoon, so they stayed at home and just went out here and there during the day, perhaps to a pub that I didn't go to in the evening to keep out of my way, in case I led him astray. Would I do such a thing? Certainly not. Well, not a lot anyway. How things change, though, when you get married and you say love, honour and obey and all that. 1 minute you're footloose and fancy free. Well, you've got a girlfriend or a fiancé. You live at home, your mum's cooking, making meals for you, doing your washing, doing your ironing. You give her a few quid a week. Your parents pay all the bills. Next minute, you're married, either paying rent or a mortgage. Hang on, you haven't got any money. Hang on, we've got to do our own washing. We've got to do our own cooking. What happened to the pub? Can't go down the pub. What was that record? Up the Junction. Was it by not the Jam? Was it the Jam? Did Up the Junction. About the girl from Clapham. Do you remember that record? Find it. If you don't know it, if you're living outside the UK and you don't know it, look Up the Junction. I'll find out who did it in a minute. Listen to the lyrics. It's quite good. This chap gets this girl pregnant and they're living in one room, which is rather smelly. And he says the railway arms were missing. Now, the railway arms was a pub. And the pub's missing. It's stuck in this room. She has this baby. There's nappies hanging all around the place. And the pub is missing. I've just looked it up. Not the Jam. Squeeze. As in squeeze something tightly. Look that up the Junction by Squeeze. The lyrics are excellent, actually. And in the end, she goes off with some other chap and leaves him on his own. Anyway, that's enough of that. Someone said to me recently, how do you remember all this stuff from the old days? You must have an exceedingly good memory. I haven't. I've got a dreadful memory. I think what happens when I start talking about something, like a certain pub or where I lived at the time or some episode or whatever, then all the memories surrounding that come flooding back. So if I'm talking about a chap, I don't know, for example, a chap in a pub and there was something about him, something happened with him, I'll talk about him and the episode or the incident, and that reminds me of other things around that time. That all comes flooding back. It's not that I've got a good memory at all. Someone else said recently, how come so many things happen to you in your life? I don't think any more happened to me than has happened to anyone else. All these stories I tell you, I met this chap and this chap did this and this couple got married and I remember when this happened and I remember when that happened. I think we all have that in our lives. It's just that people don't look back. You might remember someone at school, Fred Bloggs at school. Oh, yes, I remember him. And then leave it at that. Whereas what I do, I look back at Fred Bloggs at school. I picture him. Then I look at the people around him and that situation at school and what happened. And that's when it all starts coming back. I haven't got a good memory at all. I'm hopeless. Tricia bought me a clock. It says Friday, January 24th, 2025. I don't even know what year it is. She calls it my Alzheimer's clock. I haven't got that, by the way, but She says it'll be useful for when you have. That's nice, isn't it? That's enough about me for a minute. What about you? What have you been up to? Have you any memories? Try that, though. Try thinking back to one incident or episode back in your teens, say. Then try and have a look around that incident or episode. See if the memories come flooding back. Raise rants at protonmail.com. Oh, and Jerry, by the way, hello, Jerry. No, I haven't started the ATCO lawnmower yet. The weather's been awful. I've been busy. We've had so much going on family-wise. I just haven't even looked at the lawnmower since my friend brought it round and I put it in the shed. I've done nothing. I haven't touched it, which is a shame. It needs starting up. It needs firing up, doesn't it? Fill the shed with smoke and carbon monoxide. I can't do that. We've got the new freezer out there. Trisha will go mad if I start the engine up in the shed right next to the freezer. Then I've got the other engine, the Lister engine on the patio, of course. That needs firing up as well. I'll have to have an engine firing up day, I think. As soon as we get a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of warmth, I'll fire up both engines. I can't believe it's Friday already. I don't know where the time's going. What was the date again? See, I forget already. 21st. No, 24th January. Only about a week left and we're into February. Amberley Museum opens next Wednesday, I believe. We're going to go up there next Wednesday. I shall take the recorder with me and bore you with some rabbiting about engines and stuff up there. It's a lovely place. I won't go on about Amberley. I think I've done Amberley to death over the years, haven't I, on the podcast episodes. Then we've got the Isle of Wight coming up in May, of course. Oh, and did I tell you the engine lights come on the car? Honestly, it doesn't mean anything. There's some sensor in the exhaust system or something. They said last time we had it serviced, they said, oh, look, the light's on. It's the sensor. They did something or other and it went off. Then it came back on again. I don't know. Now Trish is getting worried. I don't like driving it around with the engine light on. I said, well, I'll take the bulb out. The trouble is you can't. In the old cars, you could get behind the dashboard, reach up behind it and pull the bulb out. They were like torch bulbs or similar. Pull the bulb out. You can't do that on these because it's one unit, isn't it? It's probably an LED or something and you can't get in there. I said to her, I'll put a bit of tape over it so you can't see it. She said, but I'll know it's on even though I can't see it. So I'm going to have to do something about that. The service is in April. I don't know. We didn't have all this in the old days. I was looking on eBay. I wouldn't buy one from eBay, but just out of interest, at Morris Minor, Morris 1000, the good old iconic car from the 60s. And you know, you can get a really nice one for what, £5,000 or £6,000? You don't pay tax on it. You don't pay road tax. It's cheap to run. Okay, it's a bit of an old plodder compared to modern cars. The heater's probably not that brilliant in the winter. But what a price though, 5 or 6 grand for one that's been restored nicely. There are some that cost a lot more than that. It depends on the amount of restoration, I suppose. It's now Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. Beautiful clear blue sky, sunshine. Where's this ice, they said? There was an ice warning. Do you remember I said earlier? An ice warning for Saturday morning. There is no ice. It's about, 5 degrees out there, which is 40 degrees, isn't it, if you double it and add 30. There's no ice at all. It's a lovely day. I don't know what they're talking about. I listen to the forecast, or take less notice of the forecast as time goes on. Less and less notice. It's always wrong. Well, not always wrong, but it does seem that most of the time it's wrong. An ice warning. I mean, come on. I suppose it's a clear day, no clouds, perfectly clear, and they expected the temperature to drop, which it has done, and I suppose they thought, well, we better put out an ice warning. Now tomorrow, Sunday, here in Britain, we're going to have a deluge of rain. I looked at the weather map earlier. I don't take much notice, but I did have a look. And the whole of the south of the country, there's this swathe, there's a word, a swathe of rain coming across. So that's tomorrow. So what I shall be doing is a few jobs out in the garden today. There's just a little bit of wind from the west. That's all there is. The trees, well, not wind, it's a breeze, if that. A lovely day. I did see the storm damage on the telly this morning. Northern Ireland, they've been hit terribly. It really is bad. Trees down. Various videos online, of course. Have a look at Northern Ireland online. Trees ripped out of the ground. Amazing, some of the videos to watch the ground all around the tree slowly lift up as the roots come out and the tree goes over. I saw a caravan with the roof ripped off, videos of trees falling through houses, and oh, it's awful. 1 million people, they reckon, is it nearly 1 million, without power, no electricity. And at this time of year, of course, when it's cold, that's not nice. And of course, if you've got gas central heating, that won't work, not without electricity, because you need the pump. Email from Karen. Hello, Karen. She says, what was your nickname? Do you have a nickname? What was your nickname in the old days when you were in your teens? It was Quackers. I've mentioned this before, I'm sure I have. Quackers. When I was at work as an apprentice radio and TV engineer, Quackers was a duck, a sort of cartoon duck. No, it wasn't a cartoon. It was a sort of glove puppet duck, wasn't it? I can't remember what it was. And it was on the telly. And they called me Quackers for some reason. All rather odd. Nicknames back then were quite common. There was one chap that we called Spokes, as in bicycle spokes, because he was heavily into cycling. He loved his bike and he loved cycling, so he was called Spokes. It's rather odd, isn't it? Another chap, we called him 30 miles an hour, because wherever he went in his car, even on the main roads, which were 60 or 70, he would do 30 miles an hour. So that was his nickname, 30 miles an hour. That's crazy, isn't it? I know. Another chap called Pete in the workshop, we called him Brian. And at one stage in the workshop, I was Eric. That came from the Magic Roundabout. Why he was Brian? Was I Eric from the Magic Roundabout? Anyway, I was Eric. We didn't call anyone Zebedee, but we did have some strange nicknames for people back then. Thanks for that, Karen. Yeah, what was your nickname? You haven't said what your nickname was. Oh, I can't mention the girl in the office. I can't mention the nickname we had for her. Bless her, she was lovely, but I better move on before I dig myself into another hole that I can't get out of. Who was into Monty Python back in the 60s, was it? Early 70s? Monty Python. Do you remember the sketch Arthur Two Sheds Jackson? This chap, Arthur Two Sheds Jackson, was a composer and he'd written some music, a symphony. The interviewer said, just before I talk about the symphony you've written, what was your nickname? Where did you get that nickname from, Two Sheds? And the chap said, oh, well, back in the early days, I was thinking of buying a second shed. And my friends and family started calling me Two Sheds. It's just between friends and family, and that was it. And the interviewer said, oh, I see. Oh, that explains that to our viewers. That's fine. Did you buy two sheds back then? No, I didn't buy two sheds. No, I was thinking of buying a second shed, but I didn't. I see. Oh, that explains that. Well, move on to your symphony then. Oh, just before I do that, do you have two sheds now? No, I don't have two sheds. I've never had two sheds. And it goes on like this. It's all rather silly. Well, Monty Python was completely silly, wasn't it? I quite liked it. I know some people did. It was Marmite, wasn't it? Some love it, some hate it. Do you have that saying down under in Australia with Vegemite? Some love it, some hate it. Do you have that little sort of saying down there? I don't know. Let me know. Raise rants at protonmail.com. Monty Python was crazy, wasn't it? There was the old grey whistle test. Was that with Whispering Bob Harris? There was a lot of good TV back then. Tommy Cooper, of course, again, like Marmite, some loved him, some hated it. Do you remember the other sketch? One of my favourites from the Monty Python era was a chap, he was on a park bench and this other chap joined him and they started chatting and this chap said, are you married? And this chap said, yes, I'm married. Do you take photographs? And he said, photographs? Yes. When we're on holiday snap. Holiday snap, say no more. Know what you mean, eh? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Nod's as good as a wink to a blind bat. Holiday snaps, eh? And then it goes on like this, and he says to your wife, does she go? Well, go, yeah. Well, yes, she goes here, she goes there. We do this, we go to the beach. Hey, go, hey, bet she does, know what I mean? It's all crazy, isn't it? I don't know why I like that sort of thing. It's humour, isn't it? It just leaves some people cold, and it leaves other people just crying with laughter. I don't know. Happy days. And the famous one, of course, was the dead parrot. He bought a dead parrot. Do you remember that? The shopkeeper said it's pining for the fields. He said it's not. He nailed it to the perch or something. Anyway, let's move on from Monty Python. Not everyone likes that. Although thinking back to those days does make me realise even more these days, there is no humour. We don't have humour on the telly anymore, do we? Like that, it's all gone. with all due respect to these modern day comedians, I said to someone the other day, a lady comedian is a comedienne. And this chap said, no, they're all comedians now. And I said, no, that's right, comedienne, isn't it female, or have I got that wrong? No, that's gone. They're all comedians now, not allowed to discriminate. I mean, stone the crows. Anyway, there we are, they're all comedians apparently. But these modern ones, I've never heard of them. I've looked up online, you find a name, right, I'll look that one up online, and they're on a stage telling jokes. It's not funny at all. It's just not funny. Is it me? Or, I don't know, perhaps it's me. The audience seemed to laugh at it. I don't know. I don't understand it all. Do you remember Freddie Starr? He was good, wasn't he? They were all good back then. They were really good. It was humour. It was good old British humour. OK, people abroad might not have understood it, but it went down really well here. And of course, it's all gone now. It's either banned or not allowed. Oh, you can't say that. You can't do this. You can't do that. Mustn't laugh at that. You get arrested. What a load of, mustn't swear, rubbish. That's the word I was looking for. The Monty Python team, just going briefly back to them, they did The Life of Brian. Now that upset a lot of people. Other people found it funny. Do you remember the sketch in The Life of Brian where one of them said, I want to be called Loretta or something? And John Cleese said, well, you can't, you're a man. He said, yeah, but I want to be Loretta and I want to have babies. And John Cleese was saying, well, you can't have babies, you haven't got a womb. This was very early on, years ago. It's quite interesting, actually, the way things are now these days. And it ended up, they said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll say that it's your right to have babies, even though you haven't got a womb. It is your right, and you can have babies if you want to, even though you can't. And they ended up with that sort of compromise, which is very interesting when you look back at that from, when was that? Was that the 70s? I really can't remember. A long time ago, way before things were as they are these days. Right, that's the end of Monty Python for now. Do try looking back, as I said, remembering a certain incident from decades ago and then thinking around that incident, and all sorts of memories will come flooding back. I'm going to try that now. Okay, school classroom back in the early 60s, I suppose. School classroom, what was I, 13, 14? Now there's an incident that's just come back to me. We were in this class called Current Affairs, which was totally boring. It's sort of politics and rubbish like that. Current Affairs. The deputy headmaster, he was the one that dished out the cane. He used to run that class. Now this boy, he always picked on this boy. I don't know why, he just didn't like him. So what this lad did, he spent hours, he wrote down all the members of Parliament, the government, Chancellor of the Exchequer is so-and-so, Minister of Health is so-and-so. He wrote it all down and he learnt all this stuff by heart, purely to get back at this deputy headmaster who took the current affairs class. I remember this particular incident because it was absolutely brilliant. The chap picked on him, the deputy head, he picked on this lad, asked him a question, I forget what it was, who's the Minister of Defence? And the boy answered correctly, it was Mr. So-and-so. And you could see the deputy head's face, he was a bit annoyed because he got it right. So he asked him other questions throughout the lesson. Who's the Minister of Transport? Who's the Minister of Health? All this sort of thing. And the boy got everything right. You could see the deputy head was becoming increasingly annoyed. He should have been pleased that the lad had studied this and was getting everything right. But no, he went on and on until he asked a question and the lad deliberately gave the wrong answer. And the deputy head just said, yes, OK, that's right. And then the lad said, oh, excuse me, sir, put his hand up. Excuse me, sir. No, I made a mistake. It wasn't, for argument's sake, it wasn't Fred Smith. It was David so-and-so. And the deputy head wasn't sure himself. He didn't know the answer himself. And of course, everyone's laughing. And it was just hilarious. I haven't explained that very well, but it was great. Throughout the whole lesson, the deputy head's trying to catch this lad out. In the end, the lad caught the deputy head out. We didn't have... The funny thing is about that, after that class, we didn't have current affairs anymore. There was the classroom door. They all had writing on big gold letters like in the old days. Science, maths, English, current affairs. And we used to pass this current affairs classroom door every day. We didn't go in there. I don't know why, but the deputy head, for some reason, didn't want us all in there. He'd been caught out and we'd all laughed at him. That caught on, actually, in our class. Class of 40 boys. That caught on. We were then trying to catch teachers out, for example, the geography teacher, catching him out on geographical question. I don't know, for example, the capital of whatever country. What's the capital of Australia was one that we caught him out on. So, what's the capital of Australia? And he said, well, it's Sydney, of course. You should know that, it's Sydney. And some boy popped up, no, it's not, it's Canberra. Or Canberra, or whatever pronunciation you want to use, Canberra. And this geography bloke, he should have known that. He's the geography teacher. And he thought the capital of Australia was Sydney. So we caught him out. We caught the English teacher. We caught her out. What's that? We learnt something about past participle, present participle, all this stuff. And we caught her out on that. And it became quite a sort of pastime, really, for us lads at school. It broke up the boring days that we had to endure, sit there hour after hour listening to these teachers droning on. It sort of broke it up, and it was really good fun. I remember studying at home, studying English or geography. What could I catch the teacher out on? I did catch one or two out with various things. I can't remember now, of course, but learn facts that the teacher probably wouldn't know, and then come out with these facts in class. I'm going to have Susan emailing me now. Susan, teacher from Germany. Hello, Susan. How are you? You're a teacher, aren't you? Oh dear, I mustn't be rude about teachers. No, we weren't being rude to the teachers. We were just catching them out. Another one that I caught a teacher out. This was a geography chap again. Actually, looking back, for a geography teacher, he didn't know much about geography. I said to him, sir, what's the capital of Israel? And he said, Haifa. And I said, no, it's not. It's Tel Aviv. And he said, it's Haifa. Then he looked it up and he said, oh, it's Tel Aviv. He didn't know. He wised up to us in the end. He knew what we were up to. And he would then, the way he dealt with it, if I said, for example, what's the capital of so-and-so, he'd say, good question, boy, good question. Right, who can answer that? Come on, you lot. What's the capital of so-and-so? So he'd put it back on to us, so it all backfired and failed. But there we are. Hope you're keeping well, Susan, over there in Germany. Talking about that, those various incidents, has led me on to something else. This is how it works. Well, for me anyway, that's reminded me of when I taught English as a foreign language to Spanish students, French students, German students. If I was asked a question that I didn't know the answer to, I got this idea from school, of course, from the geography teacher, I would then say, very good question. Who can answer that? Can anyone tell me the answer to that? And of course, someone would put their hand up and they'd tell me the answer. And I would say, that's correct, even though I didn't know. I just hoped it was correct. That was quite good fun, actually, teaching English as a foreign language. Did that for quite a while. Only as a kind of sideline, you know, something to do between repairing vintage radios and whatever else I was doing at the time. As I've said before, I've spent most of my life self-employed. I did have jobs, the apprentice job, for example. I went to work from there at a couple of other radio and TV places. Then I worked at the marine electronics place. But apart from that, 2 or 3 jobs, I suppose. I've been self-employed all my life, and now retired, of course, so I've got time to bore you with all my stories. I really don't know why this story has just come to mind. I'd been over the woods, a few of us, we'd been over the woods, and this chap, there was a bee or a wasp, can't remember which, and it went up his trouser leg. He had jeans on. It went up his trouser leg, and it was inside his jeans. So what did he do? The natural thing, took his jeans off, kicked his shoes off, took his jeans off, and off the wasp went. He disappeared somewhere. Now his jeans were on the ground, okay, and his shoes. And what happened, we were in a field with some cows. Now the cows had been a fair distance away from us, but they saw us and they started running towards us, all these cows. I don't know how many, a herd of at least 20 cows. So we leapt over the fence, ran to the fence, leapt over the fence, and this chap had left his jeans and shoes in the field. They got trampled by the cows. The cows all congregated around the gate, looking at us and mooing. They were obviously annoyed. I don't know why, possibly because we'd been in their field. It wasn't our field, it was theirs. And they stayed by the gate for ages. We couldn't get back to get this lad's jeans and shoes. So this lad said, oh, I'll go home and get some more jeans and shoes and I'll have to get those later. He's walking through the street in his socks and underpants. Anyway, what happened was he got home and his mum didn't believe him. She said, what have you been up to? where are your jeans? And he said about the cow, I don't believe that, a cow. Cows chasing us, rubbish, you've been with some girl. And he hadn't. How old were we? 14, I suppose. He hadn't at all. And he got into he got into trouble. Eventually, the cows disappeared. We grabbed his jeans and shoes and took them back to his place. His mum then had a go at us. I don't know why. She was a funny woman. And she didn't believe any of us. We said there's cows in the field and there was a wasp up his trousers, all this business. She didn't believe any of it. But that was quite funny. Of course, after that, his nickname was Wasp. I don't know why we called him Wasp. Should have called him No Jeans or something. But his nickname was Wasp. I don't know why his mum had thought he'd been with a girl. I mean, if he had been with a girl, why would he go home with no jeans or shoes on? If he had been, I don't know, romping naked in a cornfield or something, he would have got dressed afterwards. Just didn't make any sense. That's a silly story, isn't it? It's just one that came to mind. I've no idea why. I'm just going to have a quick look in the garden, make myself a cup of coffee, see what's going on downstairs. Being Saturday, we've got people for lunch, family, mother-in-law, daughter number 1. I believe we've got granddaughter. Yes, granddaughter's coming round. Sister-in-law and her husband, various people coming for lunch. So they'll be turning up soon. I'm just going to have a little look in the garden because that blue sky and the sunshine, rather inviting. It's really nice out there. 10 degrees centigrade, which is 50 Fahrenheit. Really nice. The sun is warm. We've got a little sort of sun trap under the patio roof. And it's almost like not a summer day, but a spring day, which is nice. I looked at the pond. I learnt something last night about tadpoles. You'll be interested in this. Well, you probably won't. I'll tell you anyway. We were watching Winter Watch and they talked about frogs and tadpoles. This time of year, you can have frog spawn in your pond. Now, we've had that before, and I thought it rather odd to have frog spawn in the winter because I thought frogs hibernated, as Gary the tortoise does. What could happen, and we've had this happen, you get tadpoles, it's very cold weather, you get tadpoles, they don't develop into frogs. Now, when this happened to us, I thought it all rather odd. Why aren't they becoming frogs? They were getting bigger, they weren't growing legs. Most strange. What happens is, if it's too cold, or if there aren't enough nutrients in the water, they stay as tadpoles until the next spring. Isn't that strange? That's what they said on Winter Watch last night anyway. It all seems rather weird to me. But that's what we had. We had all these tadpoles that didn't mutate or whatever they do in metamorphosis, I don't know. They didn't become frogs, put it that way. But they disappeared. They didn't wait until the next spring. They disappeared, probably eaten by birds and various other things. We did have a newt in the pond. Apparently newts eat tadpoles. Anyway, I've just had a look in the pond and there's no life at all. Frogs, tadpoles, frog spawn, nothing at all. And I do know that we've got several frogs out there because I've seen them. I shall be putting my trail cam that I got from Trish for Christmas. I shall be putting that down there in the spring so I can record frogs leaping around and put it on the website for you to see. That's exciting, isn't it? rants.info. I shall have a sip of my coffee while I'm wondering what else I can bore you with. Oh, just had a news alert. You've heard of W.H. Smith, have you? In the old days, they're a kind of, what were they, newspaper outlet, stationers, that sort of thing. In the old days, on just about every railway station in Britain, there was a W.H. Smith kiosk where they sold newspapers and magazines to the train passengers, the commuters. One by one, of course, the kiosk disappeared. And the news flash is that they want to sell their entire business. They've had enough of it. So many businesses are closing. It's awful. I do remember W.H. Smith on just about every railway station when I was a kid. I'd go train spotting and there was always W.H. Smith there with someone selling the papers and the magazines. Did they sell cigarettes? I can't remember. I'm not sure whether they sold cigarettes or just, anyway, whatever. Something else to look up. Sainsbury's, if you're outside Britain, it's a huge supermarket, probably one of the biggest. They are closing all their in-store type cafes. I think there are 61 branches where they've got sort of a restaurant place inside. They're all closing. 3,000 jobs disappearing. And I've mentioned recently so many pubs closing each week. The pharmacies, the chemist shops, they're closing. Everything is closing. I don't know what's happening in Britain. I really don't. Everything is going to the wall. We went to our club last night. They're still going. We went fairly early. It was about 4:30, 5 o'clock, just to renew our membership, which has to be done before the end of the month. So we've done that. Had a beer there. Trish had a gin and tonic. We stayed there for about an hour. They're still going, which is good. They had to shut down during the COVID, all the lockdown business, of course, and the fear was, well, my fear was that they wouldn't open again, but they did. And what we did after the club, we walked over to the fish and chip shop. And we had, well, Trish had Savoy and chips, and I had what was it called? A spring vegetable roll or something, and chips. It was very nice. It was very nice. I liked that. So we came home with our fish and chips. And then we watched Talking Pictures TV, Scotland Yard, which is good, the old black and white stuff, the old films. And we had quite a nice evening. The fish and chip shops, of course, have been in trouble for a long time now. What with business rates going up and goodness knows what else. Price of everything's going up. Chocolate has gone up horrendously. I think it's doubled in price. That's the sort of powdered stuff you buy for, I don't know, making biscuits or cakes or whatever. Everything's going up in price. Businesses are closing everywhere. As I said, I really don't know what's happening. Is this worldwide, or is it just here in Britain that this is all going on? What's happening in America? Oh, well, you've got Trump now, haven't you? He's doing a lot, isn't he? He's only been in power, what, a couple of days. He's doing all sorts of things. I can't keep up with what he's doing. Signing this, signing that, banning this, banning that. I think what we all need is some decent weather, because politics is depressing at the best of times. But of course, in the middle of the winter, oh no, it's summer down in Oz, isn't it? Am I allowed to say Oz? No, I can say Oz, can't I? What do you call us? Brits, Limeys, Pommies or something? Happy days when you could just sort of chat freely and say things to people and they weren't offended. But we do need some summer. We need some sunshine so we can get out and about and enjoy the weather instead of being stuck indoors all the time. Off to Amberley. Did I tell you Amberley opens next Wednesday? Yes, I did tell you. Getting repetitive now, look. It's funny, isn't it, how when people get older, they repeat things. I say something to Trish and she'll say, you've told me that twice today. You told me yesterday as well. The times I've said about Amberley. When does it open? Wednesday. Oh, yeah, Wednesday. Then a bit later I'll say to her, was it Wednesday? Yes, it's Wednesday it opens. Stone the crows, she says. Well, she doesn't. Oh, talking of nicknames, her nickname is Hector. And she calls me Hector. I don't know why, but well, I do know why. I won't go into that because it's a long story. Hector. What on earth you're thinking? Why'd you call your wife Hector? There's a thought. What nickname have you got for your husband, wife, partner or whatever? Raise rants at protonmail.com. I'd love to know. Tell me what nicknames you've got for each other. That might be a laugh, mightn't it? I've just had another Met Office email. I thought I'd cut those off. Stop the emails. Unsubscribed. Wind warning for Monday. Oh, more wind. Tomorrow is rain, lashing rain. Monday is wind. It just goes on and on. I must unsubscribe from these weather forecast things. I thought I'd done that. I shouldn't complain about the weather. As I said earlier, some of the videos I've seen about the storm and the winds uprooting trees, falling through people's houses, trampolines flying through the air. There was one trampoline that ended up on the railway line, so all the trains stopped, of course. And there was a video of this chap in his garden tying something down, and a roof tile came off his roof and just missed him. It smashed on the ground next to him. If that had hit him on the head, well, it could have killed him, couldn't it? That reminds me, email from Alan. I nearly forgot you, Alan. That wouldn't do, would it? Alan says that when he was a kid, this is about the weather. Well, it would be, wouldn't it? Alan's in the UK. He's a Brit. We talk about the weather. He says that he does remember bad weather in the summer holidays, because, you know, I'm always saying it was always sunny back in the old days when I was a boy in the school summer holidays. The sun shone all the time. Alan said, no, it didn't. He said we had rain. He says he remembers one year the whole 6-week school holiday was basically rain all the time. The odd sunny day, but rain all the time. I think it is that expression, what is it, Alan? I'm looking back through rose-tinted glasses, or whatever the expression is. Same with the winters. I remember snow every winter, building snowmen and all this, having fun on a toboggan, snowball fights. And it wasn't every winter. We didn't have snow every winter, I'm sure. The doorbell keeps going. I've finished my coffee. The sun's out. Mother-in-law has arrived. So I better go downstairs and say hello to everyone. Thanks for listening as always. What are we doing next? Oh no, Wednesday is the midweek message, isn't it? That's when we're going to Amberley. I should do an outside recording. That should be exciting. You can look forward to that. An outside recording at Amberley Museum. Wow, you're thinking, you've never done that before. I hope you have a good week. Oh, before I forget, those who have said, why aren't you interviewing any more people? I can't find anyone to interview. I'm going to go back to Nurse Diane and ask her whether we can do part 2. Do you remember she talked about nursing in the old days? A lot of you found that interesting. If you haven't heard it, it's on the website, isn't it? raiserants.info. Go there, and I think it's on the main page. Various interviews where I went to a church. Oh no, I didn't interview. Did I interview the vicar? I should do that, shouldn't I? Interview a vicar. So yes, I will ask Nurse Diane if she wants to do part 2. I'm all set up here. I've got the guest microphone set up. Everything's ready to go. But the chair over there is empty. I've got no one to talk to. Having said that, there is a friend of mine who said that he wants to have a chat on the podcast. The trouble is he talks a lot. He talks more than me. Can you believe it? He would out-talk me. He'd end up interviewing me. Or he'd end up just on his own, doing the hour on his own. Whenever he comes round, he talks the hind legs off a donkey. Now, there's an expression for you. He talks the hind legs off a donkey, non-stop. I'm thinking, take a breath, take a breath. I want to say so. No, have you... Oh, do you remember when... It's just a waste of time. I can't get a word in, so I'm not having him round here. You'll have about 3 hours of him non-stop. You've just about had an hour of me non-stop, so I'm going to disappear. Be good, be bad, don't get caught in all that rubbish. I shall see you on Wednesday with a midweek message. Hope you have a good week. Look after yourselves. Thanks for listening. Enjoyed your company immensely as always. Take care. Bye-bye for now.